Coming live to you from the Wells Fargo Performing Arts Center, or whatever the fuck it's called now. I just wanted the opportunity to ask Tommy questions that, even though we've spent a chunk of time together, it's not the kind of questions that I would normally say, hey, Tommy, because usually we're fucking around and... So I just wanted, one of the things I wanted to know was whatever fucking possessed you to decide that you wanted to get on a unicycle. You were a unicyclist, right?
No.
That's a lie?
No unicycle. I didn't.
You never rode a unicycle?
No.
Wow, that fucking Wikipedia.
God.
You're going to just deny everything.
No, I'm not. I just I thought that research was excellent. We're going to talk here. You're wonderful. Let's get another hand here. My God. Thank you. And I did some research on you also, and I want to know about you. The thing in 1982 about the boat thing, the boat.
The boat?
Yeah, the boat. I want to know in front of everybody, ask you about the boat incident in 1982. That's all. If you want to ignore it, you can, but a lot of us know about it.
Would you tell me about it?
No. Well, you tell me about the unicycle thing, and I'll tell you about the boat.
At what point? There's a point we all go through. Those of us who end up here doing this kind of fucking shenanigans. At what point did you know? Did you know during that as you were growing up? Was there any point where you went? I know.
Yeah. It was San Jose State, 1958. And I was asked, as a freshman, 57, 50, would I run the card stunts at the San Jose State, one of the football games, because people were throwing the cards in the air after the last stunt, and they were hitting people, and they're going to stop doing card stunts. And they said, we need someone to run the card stunts. Would you want to run the card stunts? And I said, yeah. I've had no experience at it, but it seems all you do is just make sure that they don't throw the cards. And they've been throwing the cards for about 3 years, and I don't know why they asked me, but they seemed it was a wise choice because I did it. And I stopped them from throwing the cards. I had them throw the instruction sheets. But the attitude I took was, it was pleading. I was pleading. I said, we're going to do some card stunts. Please don't. Shit, don't throw the cards. And they kind of laughed at me. And so we got to the 10th card stunt, or the 6th card stunt, and they started, by that time, they felt really bad for me. And they didn't throw the cards, and they threw the instruction sheets, and I walked off saying, I'm a fucking great leader. I think I'm going to make something of myself. Now, that was a first recognition to my, really, it's a joke, but I really felt, I felt like Donald Trump. Don't throw the fucking cards.
So you really, and that was the initial hook?
No, that was just a kind of a supportive trip.
Yeah.
I think.
What did you go to college for, other than?
I went to college because I couldn't do anything else. No, I could do other things else, but I had to go to college because you had to go to college to do something, and I had major problems. my first class. I graduated. I didn't graduate, but first job I got after I got out of San Jose State was as an air traffic controller. So I thought I'd be a comedian. What's your excuse? When did you realize that you could do something other than regular? I mean, that you could do that. That you could do that because that is a pretty strange thing. When you look at comedians, you say, how do they make a living going around trying to make people laugh?
Yeah.
And it takes a great desire to be acknowledged. If you can't be acknowledged in other areas, so I just reverted back to that card stunt thing, and I said, I don't have to be an air traffic controller. But isn't it, the greatest thing is to be able to make people laugh. It's truly, at the end of my life here, I'm looking back at from the time I was, it was about 11, 12, when I recognized that I wasn't going to make it in the academic world. So I really considered running for president.
There's still time.
But what age were you when you thought that maybe this would be? Well, you were late, weren't you? You were about.
I was 40.
40 when you discovered you were.
I knew that I was. I kind of. It took a long time for me to actually get to the point where I could really be funny and control a room, because to me, it was that thing. I was so nervous on stage that, and you can't be. You can't let them see any fear, or they're like sharks. As soon as they smell blood. So I got really good at fuck you, eat shit, fuck you too.
Yeah, handling hecklers is a good thing right away. The first thing I learned is you're stupid. I said, yeah, I didn't come up with anything. But the audience turned on him and supported me.
What I learned about hecklers, the first time when I finally fucking realized it was when I realized that the audience is there, they want to like you. They're interested in having a good time. They don't want you to be a piece of shit. 99% of the people are there. And as soon as I finally realized one day there was a guy who stood up and was just, went way, out of control. And I just stared at him. And I realized that a heckler will generally hang themselves. That you really didn't have to, you just had to wait and wait until you thought of something that would get them, or where the laugh would be, because the tension rose in the room, and then you go, mashed potatoes, fucker, and that's it.
There's nothing greater than a line that's so innocuous and unimportant. I had, I forget who it was just killing me in an interview. So's your mother, wears army boots. Honey Youngman. Just was doing a thing on the Tonight Show, was just killing me. And I said to him every time I saw him, he said, you can't even talk, can you? Your mother wears army boots and whatever. And finally I said, if material would get better, you'd be funnier. And all it took is it wiped out 5 minutes of him killing me. We always come up with a punchline. We're talking about if you have as a comedian, and there was this brief story. There's a comedy team called Reese Pepper Davis and Reese, back in the 50s and early 60s, and did a lot of Ed Sullivan shows, and Dickie and I were working, and we were really hot at the time. And he came backstage, and he said, I used to be in a group, you never heard of me. I said, I've heard of you. He said, well, my partner died and everything, but we had a line you might like to use, and it was called, he said, my partner would be saying, he did something stupid on stage, and I'd say, why'd you do such a stupid thing? He said, the drummer told me to. He said, you do everything the drummer tells you to do? And he said, yeah. He said, would you jump off a bridge if he told you to? He said, not again. Well, it's a wonderful kind of a punchline. Well, Dickie and I took that thing, and pretty soon, if you have a comedian has a great offline, you can put setups that go forever. This thing started building. It was about a 7-minute piece. And by the time we got there, was 4 other punchlines. But I said, who told you to do that? I said, Donald Rumsfeld. You do everything Donald Rumsfeld, you know. But all that set up. So as comedians, we look for exit lines, comedy lines. But there's something really delicious when you're on stage and you get laughs. And when they say a comedian say, I'm dying, we really do die. I mean, without real death coming, there's nothing as embarrassing and personally degrading as a comedian failing. And you question everything you've ever done in life. Everything. Every good deed you've ever done is insignificant. And the joy of getting laughter from people is so uplifting and so great, and you do it so well. But we all did it one time. I used to do it well.
You still do it.
No. I'm just getting older.
You know.
But I want to ask you, what was that moment? You were writing and you were doing plays and acting.
Yeah.
But when you get the audacity, and it takes that to step out on the stage, and when you start realizing.
Well, I've been doing it on and off like a hobby. Like, I mean, I'd watched you, I'd watched Carlin, I'd watched all of the guys on Ed Sullivan, all of them. And I thought, this is a kind of a fascinating thing. And it allowed me to write and get on stage and get my writing out. Because playwriting, you might as well put it in a bottle and throw it in the river and hope that somebody fucking finds it. So I was doing it on and off, and then I started running this room where we were doing plays, and I became more comfortable on stage. And then people seemed to like it. And then I realized at one point that I was I had no money, none. I've been writing plays for 20 years to the interest of nobody. And it had become a really great interest in my stand-up. And I went on the road, and I owe it to John Bowman. John was headlining throughout Michigan, and he took me on the road with him, and to see if I liked doing it. And by the time we were done, I said, "Fuck, I'm going to do this."
So that was a late bloomer. Isn't that great? That this man became so important to us so late in recognizing that. And I recognized late in life I should have not done it.
When you, I've always wondered this. Your show was, a huge influence on a lot of us, and it's a question I've always wanted to ask, having dealt with this business for years, but I never got really onto television. And when I did get onto television, they just took my nuts and went, "Here, I'm going to squeeze them as hard as I can. Now say my name, say my name." So what I was wondering was, when you started doing that show, did you have a vision of what it was to become? Because usually, when people start a show, it takes time to get sea legs and find yourself. And did you know, really?
I had no idea. The funniest thing was, we were pretty hot as a concert act, and we do guest spots on a lot of television shows. And they said, "Hey, we're going to give you a television show," and it was a sitcom with no audience. And you did it, and
you did a sitcom with no audience.
They took away the bass and the guitar, and working with all these great, wonderful every great character actor in this show, and they overwrote the parts for me, and I couldn't memorize anyway. It was just a terrible experience. So I had no political or social consciousness at the time, except that I was pissed off about stuff. And then they gave us this variety show, and I said, oh, okay, but give us some creative control so I don't have to do this crap. And I didn't know I was going to do this other crap, that someone might say, but we just wanted to be more relevant, and it had no plan. But when someone says to a comedian, you can't say that. Don't say that to a comedian. You can't do that. You can't say birth control. You can't say sex education. It was little censorship bullshit things. It was just, and pretty soon we were saying, I like to, then we started saying a political thing. And then they said, oh, you can't say that. Well, I think I was pushed into it. Because it's true. A lot of our lives are doing things that are absolutely appropriate, and someone just stop. My first experience with that oppression was in doing a concert in Terre Haute, Indiana, back in 1962 or 63, and we were selling programs. We went to the American Cancer Society, and the guy sold them. You hire a guy, and you give him 10%. And after the show was over, the guy said he took 30%. So he said, we're not going to pay you. So he called the Terre Haute cops, and they came in here and started to take away my manager. And I said, wait a second, what are you doing? He said, anyway, I was hit with a flashlight with, 16 stitches in the head. I actually believe that the police were getting a bad name when the blacks were saying they're being, this in the 60s.
Yeah.
And then when I got, as a white guy, after the concert, 9 stitches and thrown in the jail, and they took the money and the whole thing, I had no way out. I became radicalized at that point, that I started believing more things than I used to, and I thought there's an unfairness, a great unfairness happening, that sometimes, unless it touches us, and you say some guy gets colon cancer and he's also a criminal or whatever, and all of a sudden he becomes a colon cancer and speaks up for that, or speaks for, when it touches you, you become a spokesman for those, and it's not even your choice. I didn't want to be a spokesman for First Amendment rights, but all of a sudden there I was. And then you see, what's that guy from the shock jock, what's his name?
Howard Stern?
Howard Stern. All of a sudden he was a spokesman for the First Amendment. I go, what the fuck is that about? There's different levels of it, but the point is there's some truth in it, that you find yourself in a position where you have to, you stand up for something and you don't even know what it is, but you don't want to be pushed around. And I think that's a great position not to be in, but once you're there, you stand up and you get credit for something that was really not, you don't deserve credit for, because when someone goes, move, if they say move, there's a difference. Someone gives you a push and tells you to move, fuck you. So, and I think all Americans have a tendency not to be bullied, and that's how I'm kind of a television folk hero. Don't fuck with me. That's basically what it was. And I didn't know that way.
Did you have that? You had an incredible group of people working with you too. Did you know those writers? And
I love the talent. I love talent. I mean, you see Pat Paul. I saw him watching. I said, Pat Paul's, my God.
Yeah,
he's the most beautiful man. And it was a wonderful satirist, and Mason Williams, all these, and Steve Martin, who was doing stuff at the place. You recognize talent, and you see acts that you just want to surround yourself with. Ed Sullivan, the most uncharismatic kind of a character, who genuinely loved. He always stood on the corner of the stage and watched the show. Yeah. And I have a friend here who was 4 years doing cue cards during the heyday of that. So there was, when you love talent, you love talent too.
Yeah.
And Steve Allen was one of the great people. He
was really,
And so
and he doesn't get the credit he deserves,
no, well,
you know?
A lot of times they don't even need it.
You know?
But it would be nice to give those people who respect. I used to do we did a show, and the guy played a guitar, and it was, I forget his name right now, but he was on the show regularly, and he played this flamenco shit. And after the show's over and people see the show on there, they say, God, you were good last night, Tom. That show was so great, the way you played that guitar. And so a reflection, when you put good, talented people around, it reflects on you, and you don't even know it. And you think, yeah, I did play well, didn't I?
Yeah. My favorite is I'll go out. This happens with every comic. You finish up a gig anywhere, and you come out and they'll go, God, that was just that bitch you did about the cows in the field. That was fucking extraordinary. And it was the fucking opening act. You just go, yeah, no, I know, it's great.
Well, that
great.
happened.
Wasn't that great?
Well, you're on the same show. That's what it is. The Bill of Rights, there's a friend named Chris Bliss of ours, who's a juggler and a comedian, and he got this idea of taking out the Ten Commandments and put in the Bill of Rights. And he did it in Phoenix, where I first, second, I met you here earlier. Yeah. But it was such a great experience. Dick Gregory and Steve.
We got that now. Yeah, let's play a guessing game. Stephen Wright.
Yeah, Stephen Wright.
Stephen Wright, I get 10 points. And Kathleen Madigan was there.
Yeah, God, it was so great to hang out with these people.
Yeah.
And do it for a real cause, and everybody was doing it for nothing. It was a great thing, and to talk to you and Stephen Wright said, "Were you a fuck up as a kid and everything?" He said, "Yeah, of course. Why do you think I'm a comedian?" Comedians generally were troublemakers in school. My first recognition that I was fairly funny is when I was late in the 7th grade. There were 2 doors to the classroom, and I'd always, instead of going in the back door and slinking to my seat, I'd go in the front door. I'd like to apologize to the class for being late. I know it's disruptive. Mrs. Johnson, I'm so sad that I was late. I was detained. What did I miss? I'm sure I missed a lot of things in 5 minutes. And then, of course, I'm getting huge lash at my ear. Pulls me out. I go to the vice principal, and they fucking give you a swat. Back in the old day, it was corporal punishment. But it didn't change my attitude. Were you a violator of the rules as a kid?
No, I was. No, because I didn't. I was really fucking for a while. My tongue was up every ass in sight. It really was. I was disturbingly. And then I was a violator only in the sense of the sideline. I mean, I would kind of sneaky violations, but not really.
Basically a heckler from a side, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And then when I got to college, it was really like kiss my dick. It really was. When that war started, I got crazier and crazier and crazier. And my father, oddly enough, is the only man I know during the Vietnam War. My mother was totally against it. My father said, "You don't know if you're saying this. You're not basing it on anything. They claim it's based on the Gulf of Tonkin resolution. So what we're going to do?" Said, "So I'm going to read the Geneva Accords." And my father sat down and read the Geneva Accords. Who the fuck ever read the Geneva Accords? Certainly not any of the people who voted for that war, because there's nothing in this. He finished the Geneva Accords and he put it down, and I said, "What did you think?" And he said, there's nothing here that gives us the right to be there. And he said, "Fuck it." And he was making sea mines at the time, and and they were a defensive weapon, and he, at this point, it's unbelievable. And they mined Haiphong Harbor, and he made the choice then to retire because his weapons were being used.
Are you serious?
I'm serious.
Wow.
Yeah, well. But it's the parallel of what your story was to me, of that But that same thing of them doing something. My father's doing this because I can believe in it. Now you're going to fuck with me?
Yeah.
You know, and he pushed back.
My brother was always on the, Dick was always not politically, but conservative by nature and pragmatic. And yet the whole time we went through this thing with the Smothers band, we were fired. He never, ever said, you fucked our life up or you screwed it up. Never questioned. He said, you know what you're doing? I said, yeah. He says, are you sure? I said, yeah. And then when it fucking fell down, I said, you weren't that sure, were you? I said, but he never, ever pointed my finger and say, you know, you wrecked my life or anything like that. But by nature, he was different. He would argue. It was easy to say anything, and he would he's pragmatic, and it didn't make sense, and it worked out pretty good because it was someone who, you know, always would fall for it. You know, no matter what I said, he'd fall for it. Yeah, that's not true. I said, okay, some of it is.
Well, sadly, we have to actually get going, which pisses me off.
No, I thank you so much. It's so great when a guy comes up and George did it, and you do it, and Bill Maher does it, talks straight, and talks about real issues. And I wish I was smarter because I wanted to be like you. I want to be like George. I want to be like Lenny Bruce. I want to be a truth teller. No, but I didn't have the chops.
Yeah, but you were the head writer of the fucking show. That's like more than chops, you fucking idiot.
No, well.
That's super chops.
Well, it was fun to have people who thought clearly, and Mason Williams was kind of a moral compass for me during that show. Whenever I'd come back and say, what do you think of this? He said, bullshit. And I'd go back and say, yeah, by the way, this is bullshit. Where'd you hear that? I said, that's just what I feel. Because I didn't want to put a lot of pressure on him. It was his first year writing. I came in all these people they brought in. Anyway, thank you for having me introduce you and be on a stage with you is a pleasure, and you give a lot of pleasure to all of us because I'm just so wonderfully angry. I like that. By the way, I was the first yelling comedian way before you. I started off in 1962, and 61. I'm going, oh yeah, well, Mom likes you best. You didn't go.
Tommy Smothers.